You know what Patreon is?
Yeah.
It's Patreon by another name. The people running it are the people who invented Kickstarter.
Right, yeah.
And the difference is Drippy is only for
Shoot some B-roll here.
So you can just throw that out. It's a major arranger from
The book it's called The Book of M, and it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy, and it's about, well, it's set in the very near future in our world, and it's about a mysterious phenomenon that causes people's shadows to disappear all over the world. And if you lose your shadow, you gain, for lack of a better word, magical abilities, but at the cost of one of your memories every time you use that magic. And the novel starts about 2 years after this plague has pretty much wiped out the world, because you have all these people that are so powerful that don't remember anything about themselves anymore or what they would want to use that magic for. And the scene, so the book starts 2 years into this, and it follows a husband and wife, Ori and Max, who are hiding to avoid having this happen to them. And they managed to make it for about 2 years, until at the very beginning of the book, Max's shadow also disappears, and they have to decide if they're going to keep hiding or go out and face the world. I feel like I'm cutting out a little.
Well, it's a book.
No, the microphone.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the setup, and the scene I'm going to read from today is actually a flashback to the day that the very first person loses their shadow, which is a man in India. And it's told from the point of view of a woman named Naz, who is one of the main characters. And she is living in Boston at the time this happens, and as the scene starts, she and her friends are in her apartment, and they are throwing her a party. Naz had mostly tuned out the vague glints of color coming from the TV as they laughed, drinking and snacking on a cheese plate. But something caught her eye. A red news ticker at the top of the screen flashed, "Breaking news." That's when she first heard the name, Hemu Joshi. There was an annual festival that day in India, so the local news crews...
It did break up, yeah.
Should I just read loud?
Did you press the button?
It's cool. It's going.
No, it's not.
The battery may have died.
Okay.
Project.
Yeah.
Diploma.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. All right, interrupt me if you can't hear me, I guess. I'll try to. There was an annual festival that day in India, so the local news crews were already out in the bigger cities, including Pune. They'd been on Hemu for all of 7 minutes before someone working for an international station. So they'd been on Hemu for all of 7 minutes before someone working for an international station caught sight of their live feeds. Everything exploded. Within 6 hours, it was on every channel and website in the United States. And crews.
I think we should forget the mic.
Yeah. You just cursed.
I am cursed. It's my magic, you know.
Do no apology.
That's her magic.
Yeah. Still got a shadow.
Okay.
That's it. That's in here. And crews from every country were touching down in Mumbai and frantically renting cars by the dozen to drive 3 hours away to the outdoor spice market in Pune. Naz and her friends all stared transfixed at the screen, unable to look away. At the time, none of them knew that they should actually have been terrified. Instead, they were fascinated, obsessed, and Hemu obliged them. He stood gamely in the street of the market's largest aisle for those first 3 days, giving demonstrations for curious passers-by. No matter how many times he did it, it never got old. Naz could watch him for 12 hours straight, with breaks only to microwave food and bring it back to the couch. First, Hemu would smile and say something to prove he was real and that it was live, not a tape being looped. Then he'd hold out his hand, or stand on one foot and dangle the other one in the air. The street children who had been haunting him like little ghosts since the first moment would giggle and run circles around him. News sites were filled with vibrant images of those kids playing with him, laughing, dust swirling around them, the oranges and purples of the open-air spice stalls throbbing with such rich color that it made Naz squint. Fortune tellers made their way in rickshaws and on bicycles from every corner of the city to look upon this new wonder. Cripples were carried to Hemu by their relatives as if he could somehow cure them. Fathers were in the street, waving pictures of their daughters. By the end of the first day, Hemu had 62 marriage proposals, all from extremely wealthy families. There was a picture of Hemu's mother trying to hold all of the photos of prospective brides being pressed upon them. She pulled down the shoulder sash of her sari to use it like a makeshift basket, but there were so many pictures that they overflowed, the tiny faces of so many beautiful young women shaping her arms like dragonflies, flitting away down the crowded street. The day before, Hemu had been a junior customer service representative at a call center for a U.S. cell phone company and a second-string amateur cricket player for the Maharashtra team, a glorified bench warmer. He'd batted once in the last 50 games, if that. Now he was almost godlike, something out of a fairy tale or a science fiction film. The world was captivated. Hemu Joshi was the first person to lose his shadow. There were attempts to turn Hemu's mystery into science, of course. And actually, there was some science to it. I just want to pause here really briefly and say the book is fiction, but this next bit about the science that I'm going to read, it's completely true and does happen. So, there was some science to it. It was an obscure astronomy fact, but Naz had learned it from her sister Rojan. It turned out that actually, in a few countries, shadows disappearing happened every single year on a specific date. It sounded impossible, but it was true. It had to do with the angle of the sun and the seasons, the lands between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, and sometime in early summer, to be exact. No matter where you live, you always think of the sun as directly above you at noon each day, but that isn't actually true, Rojan had explained to her once, when she still lived in Tehran. Naz had then tried to explain it to her friends as they watched Hemu on TV. The looks on their faces had made her laugh. But it was true. The Earth was too big and too curved. Even though it looked like it, the sun was never actually exactly overhead, except in India on a certain day in mid-May, or as the locals called it, Zero Shadow Day. The most insane, unbelievable thing, and it happened every year. Rojan had always wanted to visit. Zero Shadow Day had become a small festival there over the decades, celebrated with basic astronomy lessons, parades, and kite flying. Every year just before noon, huge crowds would flock to open squares in the markets to wait for the moment that the sun was so exactly poised above them that their shadows would disappear for a few stunning seconds. Teachers encouraged kids to place various objects in the street, flashlights, basketballs, cricket bats, to see if they could outsmart the sun. They never could. Under the rolling hum of hand drums and sitars, as the earth and sun became perfectly aligned, all the shadows in the city and beneath the people would slowly shrink into tiny little dark specks on the ground, vanish, and then come back as the earth rotated on and away. Always. A perfectly scientific explanation. There just wasn't any scientific explanation for why, after that brief window, everyone else who was outdoors on that day watched the dark shape of themselves flicker back into form beneath them, while Hemu Joshi stayed shadowless and free. No explanation but magic. So for 3 magical days, the entire world watched Hemu Joshi dance around untethered to the earth, captivated by the incomprehensible beauty of it. Magic. Flights and hotels were monstrously overbooked. People were sleeping in restaurants and on the streets. Television channels played his clips endlessly. poetry was written about him. He even appeared to Naz in her dreams. Scientists went wild, but not a single one could prove exactly what was going on. And the day after Hemu's shadow disappeared, news broke that it had also happened to a group of 80-something people a few cities over. The news started calling them the Angels of Mumbai. It didn't sound silly at all. And then a day after that, it happened to a group of 15 in Ahmednagar and a group of 12 in Nashik. The reports kept coming in late into that third evening as more and more scattered cases across India were found. Family after family, village after village. It was like watching a miracle. When she heard about the Angels of Mumbai, Naz actually thought that they were all about to transcend into some kind of higher existence. And as ridiculous as that kind of statement sounded when uttered out loud, the world was so in awe that she didn't feel self-conscious. Not even a little. She was standing wrapped in a towel in her bathroom, dripping everywhere, waving her arms around and declaring it to one of her friends and the toilet while she brushed her teeth, and she didn't feel silly or dramatic in the slightest. That's how taken the world was with it. And then on the fourth day, it all started to go horribly wrong. Hemu Joshi had probably been forgetting things since that first moment of Zero Shadow Day, but it wasn't apparent until the morning of that fourth day. Naz had gotten up early and turned on the TV again, so she could watch Hemu while she fried some eggs for breakfast. The sizzle from the skillet garbled the reporter's voiceover, but the view was familiar. Since Zero Shadow Day, Hemu had been living exactly where he was first spotted, outdoors in the center of the market, disappearing only to quickly change clothes or go to the bathroom. There had been such a desperate outcry that first night when he tried to go home to sleep that his two brothers had dragged some bedding out and down the crowded, winding streets to him. Now the three of them camped in the center of the greasy, fluttering textiles aisle. Something was strange, though. Since Naz had turned on the TV, only Hemu's brothers had been on the screen instead of Hemu, and they looked concerned, not friendly. One of them was shouting, "No cameras." The other brother reached toward the cameraman, and the screen went dark as his hand grabbed the lens and yanked it down. What you just saw was our most recent footage of Vinay and Rahul Joshi, Hemu Joshi's brothers, taken just minutes ago. The screen abruptly cut back to a shouldered, severe news anchor. Since 5 this morning India Standard Time, Joshi's family has refused the media access to Joshi after he was found wandering through the business district of Pune, apparently disoriented, and Naz turned off the stove, leaving the eggs half done and still translucent in the pan, and went to get her laptop. By the time the yolks had hardened into a yellowy mass, she had pieced together what happened. When the news crews woke up and turned the cameras back on at dawn, they realized Hemu wasn't sleeping beside Vinay and Rahul anymore. A search was mounted, and that's when they found Hemu stumbling around the opposite end of the market, confused and agitated. He was shouting at the crowd that he didn't want to be followed and he was sick of the news crews, which was understandable. But then his brothers pushed to the front of the mass, and that's when the strangest thing happened. Hemu didn't recognize them at all. Most of the news crews were still obsessed with getting a shot of him, the man who had captured the attention of billions. But there was a second-rate team from some American gossip channel, following a group of 12 shadowless girls and boys in Nashik, who turned this from a curiosity to a tragedy. Their cameraman and reporter started sending video back to their little news studio in Los Angeles, but within minutes, it was all over the international networks. The Nashik kids were also starting to forget things.